Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And thank you very much for attending the webinar on gender and waste. This webinar is organized by United Nations Environment Program, International Environmental Technology Center, which is specializing in the waste management within the UNEP system. This center has been really working on the gender and the waste-related issues in the past years. And we have published a number of the publications on the gender and waste management. This time, the webinar is aimed at the drawing attention to the nexus between waste management and the gender. Through waste management is often considered gender neutral, gender inequalities, and gender roles are deeply embedded in many aspects of waste management, reflecting traditional stereotypes of male and female roles in everyday life. UNEP earlier published the guidelines on gender and national chemicals management policies. And this time, in consultation with our chemicals teams, we also have decided to really correct good practices of including the gender equality issues in the national waste management strategies or policies or action plans. The webinar is also trying to really showcase the good practices of including the gender-related issues in the national waste management issues. And for that purpose, we have several presenters from different countries, from Asia, Latin America, and small island developing states, who will share experiences and lessons learned on how they have incorporated gender dimensions into national waste management policies or strategies. More than 360 people have signed up for this webinar from around the world. We understand that quite a few are participating from Africa. We have tried best to have a speaker from Africa. Unfortunately, we couldn't secure the participants from Africa this time. Nevertheless, we hope we can also learn from various examples and the lessons from the speakers who are present today with us that may be applicable to other regions and countries. With this introduction, I think we have to really move to the next session. But before that, I just would like to really have housekeeping announcements. Please mute yourself and keep your camera off. This webinar is conducted in English only, and no interpretation is provided. We have received some questions through the online registration forms, but if you have additional questions or new comments, please type your questions in the Q&A box. And we try to really address some questions during Q&A time after the panel discussion. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on UNEP IETC's website and YouTube. But presentation materials of the speakers will also be available on the same website after the webinar. So with this, let's move to the do the setting the scene presentation by Ms. Junko Fujioka, who is a gender focal point in the International Environmental Technology Center of UNEP. She's going to really set the scene for today's webinar. So Junko, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Junko Fujioka. I'm ITC's gender focal point. I'm so excited that we are more than 300 people registered for this webinar. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. And I also would like to thank all the speakers who are here today to share their own experiences from 4 different countries. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. So in the next 7 minutes or so, I'll be sharing UNEP ITC and our work on gender, and also some key aspects of gender in waste management before we ask our speakers to share their own actual experiences. So let me first share my PowerPoint. Just give me a few seconds. Hold on. Okay. Do you see my PowerPoint? I cannot see the chat box, so please interrupt me if you cannot hear or listen. So first of all, UNEP ITC, International Environmental Technology Center, is part of the UN Environment Program, UNEP. We are located in Osaka, Japan, and we work with member states to implement sustainable waste management, as Takehiro briefly introduced. We do this through developing various knowledge products and supporting governments to develop waste management strategies and action plans, and through carrying out various outreach activities. And in all our work, we've been trying to mainstream gender and raise awareness of gender issues in waste management, as summarized here on this slide. This includes, for example, publishing a report with case studies from Bhutan, Mongolia, and Nepal, and also short fact sheets with recommendations on specific waste streams, such as plastic waste and e-waste. We've also developed a video series on gender and waste nexus. And the one we showed very briefly before we began this webinar just now is part of the introduction video of this whole video series. And if you're interested in the more details, all these materials are available on our website. And now, before we ask our speakers to share their own experiences, let me briefly explain some gender aspects of waste management, as it might be difficult for some of us to picture how gender has anything to do with waste management in the first place. So firstly, if we look at how women and men are engaged with waste management in the household, we notice that in many societies, women are often the main handlers of household waste as part of their household chores, which are based on the gender differentiated responsibilities at home. So women tend to be responsible for and thus have knowledge on managing household waste. And yet, women's contribution to household waste management is often unnoticed, and the different needs and challenges that women and men might have as the service users are often not considered in the design and operations of the municipal waste management. And in the absence of adequate waste management services in many countries and cities, women are often engaged in voluntary community activities related to waste management as well. However, when these volunteer activities become formalized and paid, women may not necessarily have the same opportunities as men in the new formalized work. Finally, when we look closely at women and men in the waste sector as workers and look at who does what, we often see a gender division of labor. Women often work at the lower tiers of the job hierarchy, where informality is greater. Women are also typically excluded from decision-making positions. And this reflects traditional stereotypes and gender responsibilities of women and men in everyday life in the society. It can often go unnoticed because it simply mirrors what is seen and practiced elsewhere in the same society. So it's not unique to the waste sector. And perhaps that is why waste management is often mistakenly regarded as gender neutral, even by the stakeholders themselves, and why there are still very few waste management strategies and action plans at the national and municipal levels that take into consideration gender issues. And so today, I'm so excited that we have speakers from 4 countries with us who will share their own experiences of trying to mainstream gender into their national waste management policies. And this here on the slide are some recommendations from the reports UNEP ITC has published. For example, obviously, collecting gender disaggregated data and organizing stakeholder consultations is a very important first step towards evidence-based gender-responsive waste management policies. I'll skip the rest as our speakers may highlight some of these issues and recommendations in a few minutes. But before I close, I wanted to quickly emphasize that women as well as men can play a critical role in waste management as agents of change rather than as passive beneficiaries. The quotes here are from our Gender and Waste Nexus video series. The videos introduce voices of women and men engaged in waste management as various stakeholders, and they talk about how to mainstream gender into waste management. And their stories are very interesting and powerful, and I hope you will take a look at these videos after this webinar. But let me also highlight that our speakers who are here today from 4 countries are also champions and pioneers who have been trying to mainstream gender into their own national waste management policies. So I really look forward to listening to their stories and learning from them with you all. So thank you very much. Back to you, Takehiro-san.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Junko, to really set the scene for our discussion. Now, with this introduction, I would like to really move to the presentation by the invited speakers. I would like to introduce the first speaker from Nepal, Karuna Adhikari. She's a consultant for LEAD Nepal. She has more than 10 years of experience in climate change adaptation and mitigation, environmental assessment, project design, management, implementation, monitoring, policy planning, strategy, and action plan on climate change and waste management. She also functioned as a manager for the German-funded Waste and then Climate Change project, which UNEP IETC implemented. So she was heavily involved as a project manager in Nepal for this project. And she has supported the development of the new national waste management strategy and action plans for Nepal. So with this introduction, I just would like to really call on the Karuna to make her presentation. Karuna?
Thank you, Takehiro. Can I share my slide?
Yes, it's showing up.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Takehiro. As Takehiro introduced me, my name is Karuna Adhikari. I worked for LEAD Nepal while developing a national strategy, waste management strategy for Nepal. And at that time I worked as a project manager, and right now I'm working for LEAD Nepal as a consultant. So I would like to start my presentation with the title. I just stick with the title that is highlighted by the UNEP ITC, Mainstreaming Gender into the National Waste Management Strategy. I'd like to give a brief snapshot because I could see the participants from all over the world. So I would like to introduce briefly about the Nepal. It's a mountainous country and it has 3 ecological regions. You can see the Tarai, the lowland, and hills and mountains. So you can also see the population distribution across the ecological regions. And you could also see at the right-hand side, the land cover change map from 1996 to 2016. It's a mountainous country with a growing economy, and it has a diverse ethnicity because we are talking about the gender. So we have a diverse ethnicity across the all 3 ecological regions. And you can see at the right-hand side map, the rural areas in 1996 are turning into the cities, and city population, you could see at the left side that city population is increasing and it's quite dense. So in terms of waste, the production is increasing as well. And I'd like to just give a snapshot on what is the solid waste management governance in Nepal. You could see in the chart, the Ministry of Federal Affairs and General Administration is the key ministry. And also these days, Ministry of Urban Development is also doing some of the waste infrastructures works in urban areas. And you could see at the provincial levels and local levels, these are the major institutions working in the waste management area. And I just give some snapshots and current status of waste data on Nepal. You could see the most of the waste, like about approximately 60% of the waste is organic waste, and followed by the paper and paper products, which is about 17%, and followed by plastics, about 12%, and glass, and metal, and so on. So what is the message is, more than half of the waste generated is all organic and degradable, which we can manage at the source or at the household level or where we produce. So women play a key role, as Junko just stated in her presentation. Women play a key role in managing waste at the household level or elsewhere. And we could see Junko has also highlighted some points in this regard as well. So in Nepal, we did a kind of survey, and we find out that you can see at the left-hand side chart is most of the workers are sweepers in waste management area. So among them, 38%, only 38% are female, and 62% is male. Out of that 38%, 93% are working as non-officer staffs, and 4% are officer, and only 3% are decision-making. Junko has also highlighted this. Very few of the women are in the decision-making position. So the more of the women are engaged in low-level and high-risk work in terms of waste hazard, and very few are there in the high-level, low-risk in terms of waste hazard in Nepal. So the gender inclusion in the high-level and low-risk bearing in terms of waste hazard is the next step to achieve in Nepal. So I just highlighted some of the issues and challenges, which is very similar than what Junko has highlighted in her presentation, because we together did that study. And waste-related national policies in Nepal are gender neutral still. And inclusion is very limited to low-level waste management work. And those groups, the gender groups, are not identified as a vulnerable group, even though they work in a highly exposed condition. You cannot imagine that they are working without PPE, without even a gloves, without even a mask, wearing a mask while segregating the waste in the transfer station. We could see that daily. And the most heartbreaking thing is women of childbearing age and with very small children are at high risk to occupational health. During the segregation, they are seen segregating the waste at the transfer stations, they are seen segregating the waste at the landfill sites, and so on. And they are very low paid based on the risk what they are bearing during the work period. And we need to, like, capacity building is one of the issues, we have to do a lot of works there. And gender inequalities and norms are embedded in almost every aspect of waste management and are distinctly evident throughout the entire value chain, and mirroring existing socioeconomic structure. That is also mirroring in our socioeconomic structures. We ever work as a low-level waste workers, they are not seen as a kind of, they are having a taboo kind of things. And this is the major key strategic objectives and action plans of National Strategy on Integrated Waste Management. And the book looks like this. And I will come later with elaborative things. And we adopted several approaches, while mainstreaming the gender, we did a survey first in the 35 municipalities across the 7 provinces of Nepal. And we did a consultative brainstorming meetings with several groups, with several stakeholders, including government stakeholders, private sectors, CVOs, and so on. And we did workshops, and we also formed a technical committee within a Ministry of Federal Affairs and General Administration, which is a key ministry. And we did several bilateral meetings, and we also did focus group discussions, and we did a key informant interview. And I have highlighted some of the photos from a survey. And you can see during the survey, we have just documented several informations, what is the status of the waste productions, what is the ratios, what is the proportion, and what are the key management technologies they are adopting, and what they are kind of manual technologies. You can see the women are making things out of waste, and you can see the segregating the waste at the right hand side, segregating the waste at the landfill sites, and segregating or managing the waste in the recycling unit, recycling company, the plastic recycling company. So in this area, you could see the segregating the waste at landfill sites, segregating the waste at transfer stations and conveyor belts. And you can see the right-hand side, the below pictures, it's very heartbreaking. The women are just searching for the waste, recyclable waste, to earn their livelihoods. The waste are burning, the hazardous waste is also there, and they are searching the waste to sell that to earn their livelihood. And at the left side, the woman is managing the agriculture and household waste to make a compost. So we did several meetings and workshops with government agencies, with NGOs, with private sectors, and we did several informal and formal meetings, workshops, and at also national and sub-national levels to discuss the key things to address it, to mainstream the gender, and to just to collect the things to be included in the strategy, national strategy. And we also did some focus group discussions and KII, and we also engaged the informal workers. You can see at the left-hand side, the top of the left-hand side, and those groups are also engaged, included during the formulation of the national strategies and action plans. And we also, as I mentioned before, we also formulated a project technical committee meeting. And we just conducted several project technical committee meetings chaired by the Joint Secretary of the MOFAGA and the members from line ministries. For example, Ministry of Forest and Environment, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Urban Development, Ministry of Industries, and the key ministries which are very related to waste management. And we also include 2 experts, subject experts, and we also engage representative from Municipal Association of Nepal and 1 lead Nepal representative and a member secretary from Chief of the Environment and Disaster Management section. Why I highlighted this committee is whatever we produce, whatever we do from the project, we present it in this committee and we get the feedbacks, we get the suggestions, and we move forward. So this is the main technical committee. We presented everything and we validated from the workshops with the broader stakeholders. And with these all exercises, we came up with this objective focusing on the gender, promote social justice and equity of waste management. And we just identified and we were able to put 3 action plans, like just incorporating all those issues and all those problems in ground. The ensure gender and social groups are mainstream in all waste management activities, improve the conditions of the informal waste sector, recognize and build a mutually beneficial partnerships, protect the health and safety of the waste management workers. So these are the things that is reflected under the waste management strategy of Nepal. So for your information, this strategy is still yet to be endorsed by Ministry of Federal Affairs and General Administration. And so we could say it's a draft strategy. So I've highlighted some of the way forward that similar to what Junko has highlighted. Some of the way forwards are similar, I could see. And to absolutely mainstream the gender, we should implement the action plan stated in the strategy and mainstream gender into the Waste Policy and Waste Management Act, which is amended by being amended by the Ministry of Federal Affairs and General Administration right now. And the gender groups, women, children, and waste workers, should be considered as a vulnerable group in terms of health hazard caused by the waste, and improve the health and safety condition of the informal waste workers. Thank you for your attention. Any questions are welcome. Thank you. Over to you, Takahiro.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sharing quite interesting experiences of the Nepal case. And thank you very much for introducing this national the strategy. It was really interesting to really hear about the national experiences. And you also touched upon informal sector related issues.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
Yeah, with this, I would like to really move to the next speaker. Next speaker is Teresa Rodriguez Moody. Teresa is an environmental scientist and the Chief Executive Officer at the Jamaica Environmental Trust, where she leads its environmental advocacy program and works on the projects geared toward the protection of Jamaica's natural resources and the public health. And we just would like to really hear from Teresa about the whole perspective as a lead advocacy organization in relation to the national policy. So with this, I just would like to really call on Teresa to make your presentation.
Thank you, Takahiro. All right, let me share. Are you seeing the screen? Yes? Okay, yes. Great. All right, thank you, everybody. Good morning. Well, good morning from Jamaica. Just a brief introduction about JET, which is Jamaica Environment Trust. We are a not-for-profit, non-government environmental organization formed in 1991. And we have a very big mission, which is to protect Jamaica's natural resources. And we do this using education, advocacy, and the law to influence individual and organizational behavior, public practice, public policy, and practice. Now, since our inception in 1991, we have focused a lot on the brown issues, such as solid waste management. We are national coordinators for International Coastal Cleanup Day in Jamaica. and we designed and implemented a public education awareness program called Not Dirty Up Jamaica, which is Don't Dirty Up Jamaica in English. And we have done policy reviews, advocacy around the need for improved solid waste management, a lot of which now focuses heavily on plastics. Now, my conversation today is going to talk about Jamaica and the issues related to waste management. Then I'll focus in a little bit on gender mainstreaming in Jamaica in a very general way. And then we'll look at gender and the waste management sector in Jamaica, highlighting some challenges as well as some recommendations. So across Jamaica, particularly in the urban areas, Jamaica is a country, a small island in the Caribbean, which has about roughly 3 million people. The populations are highest in the urban areas. And so the problem of solid waste management is particularly an issue, a long-standing issue in the urban areas. The country generates about 800,000 tons of residential waste, and this is just residential. We have more waste otherwise, but I've just focused on residential waste, and some of which is improperly disposed of. And that contributes to blocked drains, resulting in flooding, damage to coastal and marine ecosystems. We collect about 70% of the waste that is actually generated, and the remaining 30% is disposed of in an environmentally unsound manner, which means it's either burned, buried, littered, or ends up, as I previously mentioned, in drains, gullies, beaches, and ultimately the ocean. Unlike in Nepal, organic waste from a recent waste characterization study shows that organic waste makes up the bulk of our garbage, but about 37.2%. And we see that plastics make up about 16.8%. Now, images such as these are quite common in Jamaica, in some sections of Jamaica, unfortunately. Our challenges with proper waste management have been linked to inadequate infrastructure, such as your bins, your garbage truck, your landfills. Jamaica has no sanitary landfills. We only have disposal sites, otherwise known as dumps. This is what our coastal areas often look like. We have generally poor attitudes and practices towards the disposal of waste, and we have inadequate regulations. But on top of the regulations that do exist, we have a lack of enforcement of existing laws and regulations. And this final image is of our disposal site, our main disposal site in Jamaica. So when we look at gender in Jamaica, we see that 60% of women are in the workforce compared to 73.2% men. And of the 11.3% unemployment, and this is not 2023 figures, these would have been 2020, 2021, we see that male unemployment makes up 8%, and women unemployment is 15.2%, even with higher education. But we see that female-headed households represent 15.9%, and those headed by males are 13.2%. 58% of the households from the poorest quintile are headed by women, and informal sector and domestic workers, 99% of these are women, and not classified as workers by law. They're subject to low wages, poor working conditions, there's no union and national insurance. But now in certain industries like tourism and farming, we have some specific figures where we see that women are very underrepresented and underpaid. For example, women are paid less. They have more of the unskilled low-level jobs, even though they make up 53%. In agriculture, only 30% of the farmers are women and very little own land. Now, these two industries are very significant for Jamaica's economy. But unfortunately, we don't have this type of data for the waste sector, which unlike you saw with Nepal that they had data, we don't have this level of data, but I'll get into that in a minute. Now let's look at the waste sector. The National Solid Waste Management Authority is the organization with the sole jurisdiction for solid waste management in Jamaica. They have a legal mandate And with the enactment of this National Solid Waste Management Policy, which was done in 2000, and the National Solid Waste Management Act, which is 2002. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't have private sector involved, because the authority is also a collector of garbage as well as a regulator, and they can't do all of the garbage collection, so that's also done by private sector. So as I mentioned, yes, they collect and dispose of domestic solid waste, including hazardous waste, while simultaneously regulating the sector. And collection by garbage trucks and burning are the predominant methods of garbage disposal and treatment. We have several management policies, waste management policies and strategies that govern, well, they govern solid waste management in Jamaica. They're listed here. We have the Solid Waste Management Policy, Jamaica's National Development Plan for Vision 2030, Integrated Solid Waste Management Strategy, the National Policy for the Environmentally Sound Management of Hazardous Waste, and the National Energy for Waste Policy. As you can see, some of these are quite old, but I'll explain the significance of that in a minute. So Jamaica has two overarching policies to guide mainstreaming in Jamaica. We have the Gender Sector Plan, which is the Vision 2030 is like a roadmap for Jamaica's development. And the motto or the tagline is to make Jamaica a place to live, work, and raise families. And so the idea is that the implementation of all the plans on the Vision 2030 will push Jamaica into a more developed country and society. Now, the goal under this gender sector plan was to have a society free of sex and other forms of discrimination in all spheres that creates and maintains a socioeconomic, cultural, political, and legal environment where we see that males and females at all stages of the life cycle can enjoy full human rights and develop their full potential as productive citizens. Later, and that was created in 2009, the National Policy for Gender Equality, which was later adopted in 2011, is also to be implemented alongside the Vision 2030 in line with the National Development Plan. So the policy outlines Jamaica's commitment towards gender equality, and it encapsulates the different outcomes and outcomes that are expected in order to achieve gender equality. And its purpose is to mainstream gender. I've taken out a bit of the text and just to say that, it's supposed to be mainstreamed in all institutions, again, where females and males have equal access to opportunities, rewards, and resources. So the question is, has this been done in our waste sector? Now, the unfortunate thing is that we don't have a lot of data, despite the fact that we have these policies and this gender plan, this roadmap for how we are to have a non-discriminatory and gender equality in the country and in all ministries. We don't have the data because it's simply not being collected at this level. Now, and so what I have to do is, talk to you based off of the observations that we've been able to make. So despite these policies and commitments, to mainstream gender into all sectors, we can see that gender issues are not addressed in the National Solid Waste Management Policy. No, the fact is it was created in 2000. It's actually still in draft. And so it would have come before the gender sector plan and the National Policy for Gender Equality. And so it has not been updated. It is significantly outdated to a number of issues. We see that while it is acknowledged that the National Solid Waste Management Policy is in need of updating, it is not even clear if there is any plan to update it to include gender considerations. The National Policy for Environmentally Sound Management of Hazardous Waste, which is more recent, it considers very briefly, if you did a search through the document, you'll see gender mentioned maybe once or twice in terms of management, and it's mentioned in a very, very general and passing manner. The National Solid Waste Management Authority, which is the main waste regulatory authority, as mentioned earlier, earlier doesn't seem to even have a gender policy. When we've tried to, get into the information, try to learn more about how these different organizations have addressed gender, but we have not been able to find out. And it's almost like a question that is, answered in a bit of with some surprise, like why are we concerned with gender? Nevertheless, we can also see the following, and again, some of this is not supported by data. Again, it's via observations. Now, within government sector, there is good diversity among gender. We can see that from the data. Women, for example, are represented across all levels within the organizations. This is for National Solid Waste Management Authority, including at the board and senior management level. Of the 11 board members of NSWMA, we see that 6 are male and 5 are female. Of the 8 senior management in NSWMA, we see that 2 are male, and the remainder are female. Now, we see that males dominate garbage collectors, but street sweepers, which are the lowest level, is apparently dominated by women. But again, we don't have the information on differences in pay scales, unfortunately. Now, within private sector, I'd mentioned that we do have a number of private collectors, and several of the privately owned waste management firms are in fact women-led and women-owned. Now, in the informal sector, for example, waste picking, sorting, and recycling, we see that that is often done by women, but again, there's not enough data to support this. Now, beach cleanups, which are often done by community, community-led organizations, civil society organizations, beach cleanups, community cleanups, they're often organized and led by women. And we know this because we assist CSOs with doing these cleanups by providing them with the necessary, whether it is gloves, whether it is masks, whether it is garbage bags. There is little, so basically what we're seeing is that some of this information is slightly different than what is observed at some countries, where we see that gender women tend to dominate the lowest levels of the hierarchy. But what we're seeing here in Jamaica is that there seems to be some representation of women at the highest level and even in the policy level. But we have no quantitative data to support these observations, really. So we have to do more studies. But what I want to do here is highlight in the Jamaican context some of the challenges or the hurdles that we have learned about with respect to formally mainstreaming gender into the waste management sector. So we mentioned the gender sector plan, which was kind of supposed to be a roadmap for how we should mainstream gender into all ministries within the government. And what we see that no funding was actually made available to this plan once it was created. And so lack of relevant budget to do gender analysis also, that it underpins gender mainstreaming in any sector. Now, there doesn't appear to be much interest, and this is tied to lack of political will and commitment. I mentioned lack of data earlier, and there seems to be a lack of understanding to what gender is and its relevance to development, or even what gender equality is. Perception that gender equality and gender mainstreaming will disempower men, and there's somewhat of a backlash to the women's perceived advancement. There are pervasive gender stereotypes. And there's also lack of training and technical skills to mainstream gender. There's lack of time and human resources. And again, this is linked to the fact that there was no funding, political will. We've seen that there's no gender focal person in any of the ministries, despite the policies, despite the sector plans. And so this would probably explain why we're seeing what we're seeing here in Jamaica, but at the same time, we have seen, despite the support or the following of policies and so forth, that women tend to still be involved at different levels in the waste sector, and sometimes at very high levels. Now, going forward, we've made a few recommendations, and this has to do with one, where there is a definite need to raise gender awareness in this field of research and practice. We need to gather sex disaggregated and gender disaggregated data, especially in the waste management sector, because we see that it does exist in other sectors here in Jamaica. We need to gather data also on gendered attitudes and behaviors with respect to waste, because again, this is a gap that we don't have, and we need to employ gender sensitive participatory methods, and naturally, we need to provide funding for all of this to take place. So these are some key recommendations coming out of some of the challenges that we've seen with being able to mainstream gender into our waste management policy. Additionally, these are, this is in order to have a more gender responsive waste management and, kind of sum it up all together here, we need to have the inclusive decision making, where we have women and men a part of that decision making process. Education and awareness. We need to have the implementation of gender sensitive education and awareness programs to inform both men and women the importance of waste management and what their roles are in reducing, reusing, and recycling. We need to create income generating opportunities to consider both genders. We need to have waste management infrastructure that considers the safety and convenience of both men and women. Now, this is not often considered, but for example, if you don't have well-lit and accessible waste collection points, this can be a challenge for women who are often the ones of disposing the garbage at the areas for collection. We also need to provide, training programs that are tailored to more the needs of women and men. A lot of times they're very gender neutral, as we've learned. The health and hygiene considerations, again, that's something I think that we'd heard from our previous speaker. When we have collection sites, many of the women are waste because, what are some of the facilities that are there to help with women and their menstrual hygiene, for example, community engagement, data collection. So I won't go into it because I know I'm running through time, but it's essentially, by adopting gender responsive waste management practices, communities can enhance the efficiency of resource utilization. They can promote social equity, and they contribute to more sustainable waste management systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I think you emphasize the lack of the gender aggregated data, which rendered the national planning very difficult. And thank you very much for highlighting gender issues in different stakeholder groups in the planning process of the national strategy in Jamaica. So we heard about the Nepal case, which is a mountainous country. And the second, the speaker was talking about the island country situation. Now we move to the coastal country, which is Uruguay. I would like to introduce two speakers for today. Kihara Fioretto is an environmental consultant in waste management and circular economy. Since 2021, she works as a consultant for the Inter-American Development Bank, assisting the Ministry of Environment of Uruguay in the implementation of the National Waste Management Plan. Among the topics, she is currently working on the single-use plastics, food loss and waste, and construction and demolition waste. And the second speaker is Virginia Chiesa. And Virginia is an economist specialized in environmental public policies and economic instruments related to sustainable production and consumption. Currently, she performs as Inter-American Development Bank external consultant for the Ministry of Environment of Uruguay, focusing on the circular economy and waste management. And she also takes part of the Green and Inclusive Economy Group of Uruguay. So with this introduction, I believe that Kihara is going to make a presentation first, and Virginia may join the later discussion today. So Chiara, you have the floor.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Yes, my colleague Virginia will join us for the Q&A session. So good morning, everyone from Uruguay. First, I would like to thank IETC of UNEP for this opportunity to share our experience and the lessons that we learned in mainstreaming gender in our national waste management plan. So I'm sharing my screen. Well, this is the agenda for today. First, we'll look at some background information about Uruguay. Then I will explain what the National Waste Management Plan is. And finally, we will focus on how we incorporate gender dimensions and what are the challenges that we face today. So as my colleague of Nepal did, I have a little short snapshot of Uruguay, which is a small country located in South America. We have 3.4 million inhabitants. And here you can see some important figures that represent our economic model and situation. So some of you may know, but Uruguay, nearly 90% of our land is agricultural land. So we are a producer and exporter of food and raw materials. And it stands out in Latin America for its economic and social stability, of course, in relative terms, but I mean in the region. And of course, compared to other countries in the region, it has a high per capita income and relatively low levels of inequality and poverty. Despite this relative economic success, social and gender issues, of course, persist. And today the idea is to talk a little bit about how these challenges intersect with the waste management. Here I'm showing the main findings of a World Bank report that analyzes the current gender situation in Uruguay. And what I think it's interesting about this study is that it's focused on several aspects in which women may face barriers or inequalities, such as the quality of employment or economic opportunities, among other aspects. What we can see, for example, here is that only half of Uruguayan women participate in the labor market, and that we earn 31% less than men for similar positions, for similar works. And moreover, women own less than 12%, of companies. And if we look a little bit more about the management position in the executive office, so in the public sector, what we see is that 85% are men and only 15% are women. So what we can see is that women have a much lower participation than men in decision-making positions in the public sector. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the waste management plan, the National Management Plan, which is a national plan favoring the transition to a circular economy. It arises from the identification of the main challenges of waste management in our country, and it sets strategic objectives and also lines of actions for the next 10 years in order to overcome these challenges. I don't have a slide about what are our main challenges, but I really appreciate the presentations that came before me that showed the main challenges of the country. Of course, some of them we also share. For example, problems with final disposal, open dumps, problems regarding and challenges regarding informal sector working conditions, and lower problem household waste. So those are some of the big challenges that we face. So the objective of this waste management plan, the first at a national scale, identify these challenges and set the objectives for this period of 10 years. What is really interesting regarding a gender perspective is that the process of developing the plan involved a wide range of stakeholders, and that 73% of the participants, or people that participate in this process, were women. So this highlights the involvement of women in the making of the plan. So how are gender issues addressed in this plan, and what was the role of our ministry? I have to be honest and say that at the beginning, gender mainstreaming was not something that we were considering. It was not something that was put on the table. However, as we move forward, and also with the participation of the other stakeholders that were in the making of the plan, the importance of mainstreaming gender became evident, which led us to seek help from referent organizations. So I think that before thinking about how we did it, we had the need of thinking why it was important to do it, no? Why it was important to put the subject on the table. So our main role as coordinators was on the one side that, I mean, putting the subject of gender mainstreaming on the table and avoiding that this plan became a gender neutral plan. So working in order to integrate gender dimension. And of course, another of our role was to go out and look for the institutions that could help us doing that, because of course we in our team, we didn't have the skills or the training to really integrate the gender dimension in the plan. So what did we do? First, we engaged in consultation and exchange meetings with experts from the Ministry of Environment and of Women of Waste, which is a task force of International Solid Waste Association. And these exchanges were really important for us in order to look at the precedents that we had in our country and to understand what may be gender inequalities in waste management systems. And besides that, we integrated InMujeres in the process of making the plan. InMujeres is the institute of the Ministry of Social Development that is responsible for gender policies in Uruguay. I think that it was also mentioned before that it is really important to articulate the waste management policy with the overreaching gender policies of the country. And this was really the role of InMujeres, which is a really important role. And we also did a survey on local government workforce dedicated to waste management. And even if not all local governments answered to this survey, so the information wasn't really complete, it helped us to have a glimpse about what can be what are gender disparities now on local government workforce dedicated to waste management. What we saw is, if we see the overall total employment, there are more men working in waste management at the local government. And if we look at the tasks, there is greater demand for men in tasks of greater physical effort, but also of higher authority or technical training. So I agree with this data, at least agree with what we already saw, that women are more in low-level waste management tasks. And with low level, I mean low level regarding to pay, no? Because they can be really of high level if we see what these tasks mean. But if we look at the payment, they are not as well paid as other tasks. So there are more women, for example, in administrative tasks, education, environmental communication, and more men in decision-making positions. So there is a clear gender division of labor. And this, as I said, was just the beginning. We really need to strengthen to strengthen the information system in order to have more information about gender disparities. So if I had to to summarize what were the main results, I would say that we define gender and generations as one of the strategic issues, and which implies incorporating the gender perspective in a transversal manner, as you can see here. And also, we design follow-up indicators that consider the disaggregation criteria by gender, and this, as I said, was really important. Regarding our key successful factors, I think that in the process, it was reviewing precedents, forming alliances with gender equality aid concerns, and key interventions were improving the working and living conditions of women working in informal sectors, and also avoid further inequalities in the distribution of domestic work. And here we are seeing women as users of management services. So what are our ongoing challenges? Of course, we still have a lot of challenges, and we need to continue working in the integration of gender dimension in waste management policies. I would say that first, we ideally, it would be possible to evaluate actions through good implementation of the plan, and also to define corrective measures if it is necessary. But we don't have enough capacity in our team, so we lack training and technical skills in order to do so, and to do this really follow-up about the gender situation in the implementation of the plan. Of course, in our ministry, there are specialists, but maybe there's one or two people who are specialists for all the environmental subjects, so it's not enough. And also, sometimes it is difficult for us to incorporate gender equality criteria in the composition of waste management roundtables and panels that we organize. So we try to avoid, of course, the formation of panels made up only of men, but sometimes it's difficult when we are talking about roundtables for authorities. So this is showing us that we still have to work to strengthen the presence of women in management positions. So, and just to finish, I would say that incorporate gender perspective is crucial for designing actions in sustainable waste management. And as we move to a transition to a circular economy, we must ensure that our efforts not only avoid increasing gender inequalities, but actively contribute to reversing them. So thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chiara. Oh, sorry, do you still continue?
I am available to answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chiara. And you also emphasize the actual impacts of the implementation of the national strategy and the challenges for incorporating gender equality in the implementation of the national strategies. And I really appreciate that you really moved to the implementation phase of the national, the waste strategies. And so now I move to the last speaker. After the moving from mountain countries to island and coastal country, and now we are moving back to the island country, the mountain country, the Bhutan. Sachin Limbu works as the Senior Environment Officer in the Waste Division of the Department of Environment and Climate Change at the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources in Bhutan. He has 15 years of experience in environmental impact assessment for all the policy implementation, monitoring, planning strategies, and action plan on climate change and waste management. So, the Sachin, now please introduce your case from Bhutan. Sachin, if the connection is not very good, you may turn off your video.
Sorry, my video is not working. Camera is not working.
Yeah, we can hear you very well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Takehiro, the moderator, the host. presenters and all the participants. Good evening from Bhutan. So as I'm introduced by Takehiro, I would like to go with my slides. Can you see my screen? Okay, thank you. So I would like to go with National Waste Management Strategy. Our country's background: the Constitution of Bhutan mandates a forest cover of 60% at all times, showcasing our commitment to environmental sustainability. The legal provision reflects the country's dedication to preserving its natural resources for current and future generations. Despite Bhutan's environmental success, we have a waste generation problem due to population growth and economic activities, and with unsustainable development processes. We have solid waste and effluents as a major environmental concern, exacerbated by weak institutional coordination, chronic under-resourcing, and rapid urbanization. The readily availability of non-biodegradable goods and changing consumption pattern further contribute to the challenge. The increased demand for resources and the competitive use of these resources position waste management as an economic opportunity. By adopting circular economy principles, Bhutan can create economic value from waste and contribute to sustainable development. The National Waste Management Strategy focuses on transitioning. It is a transition from linear model to a circular economy, emphasizing the importance of preventing waste generation at source and promoting reuse, recovery, and recycling. Our main goal, strategic goal, is to continuously promote towards zero waste Bhutan by 2030. Objectives of National Waste Management Strategy inculcate the deeper sense of environmental responsibility by consuming less material, reduction of waste generation from goods and services by choosing the more natural and less wasteful options, effectively manage waste following integrated concept to ensure maximum material recovery and minimize quantity of waste to be disposed, to promote participation of all stakeholders in waste management in order to achieve targets, improve waste management service delivery, ensure proper treatment of all types of waste. That's our objective. We have a short-term targets: sustainable financing mechanism, design and implement a sustainable financing mechanism, waste collection system, provide reliable waste collection system nationwide, and financial support for waste management. We ensure that there is a budget head, creating a budget head for all local governments, districts and block levels for the waste management, and strengthen implementation of by linking with the annual performance agreements, work plan, and overall 5-year plan of the sector. And operationalize Waste Prevention and Management Act by strengthening the institutional setup, enhance coordination between different agencies, implementation monitoring. We implement the waste management strategy through performance benchmarking and regular reporting to oversight agencies. Mandating good practices. We have a good practice of, we mandate the good practice of activities like reduce the use of packaged goods, total segregation of degradable and non-degradable waste, implementation of zero waste events at public functions, and institution of National Waste Management Information System. So awareness strengthening. We create awareness through, in partnership with the media houses, private waste management entities. We have a capacity building, develop and implement coordinated capacity building programs, waste management infrastructure improvement, and we have improved waste management process through by developing waste management plan for each district and geogs, blocks, achieve 50% collection of organic biodegradable waste converted to manure with market mechanism for sale. This allow infectious and hazardous waste disposal in landfills, achieve 100% reduction in illegal dumping of construction and demolition waste, achieve 100% reduction in sewage outflow in urban areas, upgrade dump sites to sanitary landfills. We are in the process of improving the dump sites into the sanitary landfills. The medium and long-term targets, comprehensive waste management, facilitate the management of each type of waste in all forms across the country, the development of codes of practices and process system. And we are exploring to other disposal options like thermal disposal and upgrading all the compost site, disposal site to sanitary landfilling, and identifying regional sanitary landfills, and progressive service fees, implement progressive service fees for urban centers, providing financial incentive, community and school waste banks. We have community and waste school and waste banks whom we support. And seamless coordination, establish seamless coordination on planning, implementation, monitoring of waste activities, and 100% improvement in waste collection and disposal. Our plan is to achieve 100% improvement in waste collection and friendly disposal method. And we are more focused on extended producer responsibility agreements. We have EPR agreements with industries and big companies on waste management, especially we go for e-waste and guidelines for toxic waste. We are developing guidelines for industries generating toxic waste and segregation of organic and biodegradable and non-degradable waste. Require all areas to have separate collection of organic and biodegradable waste with compost plants and established market mechanism. So 100% resource recovery, we are aiming for 100% recovery, resource recovery, then waste segregation into more than 2 categories. And we have this special thing, calculation of GHG reduction for carbon credits. Mandate the inventory of all waste diversion data to calculate greenhouse gas reduction, enabling the claiming of carbon credits. This links waste management practices to broader environmental benefits. Cost recovery mechanism. We're trying to set up mechanism across the country for the cost recovery of waste management services by imposing appropriate service fees. Strategic intervention and tools for sound waste management. We have strategic tools, sustainable financing, technology development, capacity development, voluntary agreement, establish communities and school waste banks, behavioral change, mandatory budget hit, as I said earlier, data and information management, and cross-cutting issues. We have waste management during public gatherings and festivals. During such gatherings and public festivals, we have cross-cutting issues, and gender and waste management. Gender and waste management. Gender stereotypes are evident in waste management sector, with men often preferred for physically demanding jobs, while women are more commonly employed as waste pickers and cleaners. Street sweepers in Thimphu municipality, predominantly we have a female, whereas drivers or vehicle collection drivers all are males. Government initiatives, formulation of gender equity policy aimed at integrating gender issues across policies, programs, and projects. We have NGOs like Tariana Foundation and Clean Bhutan recognizing the pivotal role of women in waste management. The Clean Bhutan project, WOW, Wealth Out of Waste, focuses on training unemployed wives of police officers. The women who stays at home, they are being trained, advocated, and their capacities have been built for the utility bags and accessories from plastic waste. Plastic waste is being recycled or reused. So role of NEC, National Environment Commission, our NEC is responsible for monitoring overall progress through annual performance agreement, annual work plans, and integrated waste plans. In alignment with the 5-year plan, gender integration, we have integrated gender issues across all waste management actions, conduct a situational analysis of gender issues related to waste management, collaborate with the National Commission for Women and Children. We have this Women Commission to support gender integration efforts, conduct various capacity building and advocacy programs for the women in regard to waste recycling in collaboration with NGOs. Measuring progress, we're monitoring the implementation of waste management system, assessing progress in waste management, evaluation of progress in implementing the strategy, review effectiveness of strategy. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sachin, to introduce the national waste management strategies. And you also touched upon the climate change, the linkage with waste management related issues, which is also the responding to one of the participants' question about the climate change related the benefit. So with these 4 speakers, I just would like to really start having a Q&A session. I'm picking up only few questions from the pre-registered participants, as well as today in the Q&A box. And I think all the speakers mentioned about the informal sector or informal waste pickers related issues. And I just want to really ask all the speakers about the kind of really woman's role in the informal waste the pickers, and particularly when the national strategy is trying to really integrate informal waste the pickers into the formal waste management the systems in the countries. What are the really implications? What are the results of the intervention at the national level on the woman and the other gender-related issues? So, Karuna, I think you also emphasized about the informal sector. At the same time, how do you really see the woman's role in the informal sector?
Thank you, Takiro. Yes, I mentioned about the informal sectors and the issues about the informal sectors and more gender issues. In my case, in Nepalese case, the more issues are into the ground level, the informal sectors, basically the waste pickers and the waste segregators, I would say. And in Nepalese case, we could see the health and safety issues at that level. And basically, they are very, very low paid because based on the risk, what they are bearing daily, in terms of health hazard, in terms of all the things as well, how much they just contributed from the 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They worked 12 hours. And in terms of initiatives, now there are I could see some of the projects working for informal sectors. They are providing capacity building trainings for those sectors, but still, in terms of informal to formal, just transition from informal to formals, they are yet to do a lot of works in that sectors because in Nepal, most of the waste management works is carried out by the private companies, private waste management companies, and they are either the employee of those companies or they are not the employees of any because they randomly go to the landfill sites and start segregating the waste and sell those waste to earn their livelihood. And the main challenge is how to monitor those activities, how to regulate those activities. Means to make them formal, how to regulate is the main issue. So there is a lot of gray area to work in to make them formal. And I would suggest because in my case, in any policies and act except in our strategy, there is no gender, there is all gender neutrals. And first of all, the gender should be incorporated in the act or policies. And so that the private sectors who are working on that is very obliged to work on because they are obliged to provide the requirements mentioned in the policies. So that the local government can also monitor So this is my kind of learnings from my experience, Takahiro.
Yeah,
I guess
thank you very much.
I can fulfill your expectations.
Yeah, no. Thank you very much for really sharing.
Yeah.
Can I also ask the Sachin, from the Bhutan's experience, how do you really see the role of woman in this the informal sector?
Thank you for the question. Especially in Bhutan, we don't see informal waste pickers. Usually we have our regulation is such a way that to collect illegally also we need approval. We don't allow anybody to pick waste without some approval. So in Bhutan, I think waste pickers are not random, and women usually their waste management system they are really in the household level only. They do the thing. There is no informal waste pickers, but every waste management system is taken care by private entities. All maximum women or men, they are employed. So we feel that there are not much illegal waste pickers or what to say. We don't feel we don't have much concern about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you, Sachin. So Virginia and Kihara, would you like to really respond to this question about the informal sector? The Uruguay situation might be quite different from the mountain countries in Asia.
Okay, I'll try, but good morning to everyone. But later, Chiara can add something maybe. The informal sector in Uruguay on waste pickers, it's confirmed about, we don't know exactly the number, we have estimations, we have about between 4,000 and 8,000 waste pickers, informal waste pickers. And we have a research on Uruguay from 5-6 years ago that studies specifically the role, the role of women in waste management, informal waste management, sorry. And they found that there is a waste division a work division of the waste management in informal sector. Women work more at home with children in informal houses. I mean, with some conditions that are not adequate for them, and they work like sorting the waste and so on. And the man work more in the streets, on street, with picking the waste, and then in the commercial chain selling the waste. So they have kind of more social capital, because they relate more with the other places, and the women are kind of inside the home. So there is a division like that. I don't know, Chiara, if you want to add something.
Yes, maybe just to add that in this transition to from informal to formal work, I think from what I have heard, this transition, they really find that not only the aspect of improving working conditions, but also the having access to health services, which is also part of formal work, is something that is really considered very positive of this transition. But I think we also have to think that in this transition for waste picker and for women specifically, there are things that they gain and things that they lost from compared to informal work. No, for example, in the sorting plants, they cannot recover all the things that they used to recover from open dumps. So we also have to take this into account, I think, when we are talking about formal transition, no, for women and for men.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chiara and Virginia. And I also would like to really ask Teresa about really the situation in the Jamaica. What's happening in Jamaica in terms of the just transition, in terms of really the integrating the informal waste pickers in the waste management system, and what's the really role of women in this informal sector and the transition to the just system?
Okay, thank you, Takahiro. So one of the challenges that you've heard me mention is that data is not there to support. So some of this is just really based on observations. So waste pickers are a combination, you'll see, of men and women. I think it might be dominated by men, but when you see women's involvement, I think it has to do with the fact that you have a lot of women-headed households, and they have to find a way to send their kids to school. They tend to get quite creative, turn it into a business. We've seen that there's a couple waste pickers have turned it into a business where they've hired other waste pickers who work for them, and then they pay them salaries out of the earnings from selling the waste that is cleaned, and the women tend to be involved in the actual cleaning of the waste. So, for example, items, clothing, are collected from the dumps, and they're washed, cleaned tend to be by women, and then they're sold by women again at the informal in the informal markets. I don't know if there's any plan to integrate women formally into the employment base, because again, one of the challenges that we've had in relation to the waste management sector is that regulations, legislation is far outdated, and there does not seem to be much quick action into including some of these concerns, including things like, for example, plastic waste, which is a significant challenge. So as it relates to formally integrating them, and I really wouldn't be able to speak in much great detail. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. And I think you mentioned about plastic waste. And as you might know, that the United Nations Environment Program is organized an intergovernmental negotiation committee to discuss and negotiate a legally binding instrument on the plastics. And I also would like to really raise the question about the plastic recycling and the plastic waste management. I think some of the speakers mentioned that the plastic is not really large part of the waste. At the same time, plastic is also valuable, the waste. And including the circular economy approach to the plastic waste, how does this, the circular economy approach of the plastic waste impact the woman and woman-led household economy? So I just would like to really ask the speakers about this question about the plastic waste and the plastic recycling, and then the use and the role of woman in that. Karuna, you would like to really start?
Thank you, Takahiro. Just specific to plastic waste and plastic recycling, we have not done such assessment, but in terms of my experience, the women are benefiting from those waste, actually, because we've seen some of the women's waste pickers on the landfill sites, on the transport stations, and the informal dumping sites as well. and they are mostly like focusing on picking the plastic waste, the high quality plastic waste, the bottles and so on, not the small, not the like plastic bags and PET bottles, but they are focusing on high quality plastic materials. So, so that I can say that they can, if we can make that formal, and we can make that we can engage them formally in the recycling, the plastic recycling, and we can achieve a kind of like circular economy, and which can benefit the women, the informal women of Nepal. But just from my experience, but we have not done such assessment during that. We have just documented the data, and we've just collected the information back later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Karuna. I think this is also important subject for us in UNEP, and I would appreciate any input at the later stage. So how about this issue in Uruguay, Virginia and Chiara?
Yes, well, I would say first that we don't have enough information to make this intersection between plastic and circular economy and gender dimensions. Yes, of course, plastic waste is one of the mainstreams that we have here in Uruguay, that we also is one of the mainstreams, which is that is recycled and recyclable. Even if today we have a lot of challenges with the market of recycling because of the prices that went down drastically. So this also impacts in the informal sector and in the economy of recycling overall. Maybe if we focus on single-use plastics, we are working a lot in our ministry in order to prevent some of the single-use plastic that we consider not necessary. And what I would say there is that we need to take into account when we do communication campaigns and when we work with the population to prevent that all these new conceptions, to prevent this from always being women who have the responsibility to preventing single-use plastic and also sorting at home, and also preventing food loss and waste. So we work with the population trying to create these new behaviors and more conscious, but we need to take into account that in this process we will not reinforce the inequalities that may exist at home, in the domestic work. This is only my comment, but as I said, I think we don't have enough information to do like data about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Just let me add that in Uruguay we have an extended producer responsibility law that the private sector manages the packaging, and there is a social inclusion component on the program. So it's not only plastic, but all the packaging that goes to home in Uruguay. But there is they generate formal jobs opportunities for informal pickers. So that's this is growing now because the government set some goals to the private sector to raise the recovery of this packaging. And we are trying to set a deposit refund scheme for packaging. So we think that could arise the levels of recovery of packaging, and also the opportunities for informal pickers.
Yeah, thank you, Virginia. I think it is a very interesting issue you raised about the role of a woman in the EPR schemes, the extended producer responsibility, the schemes. So Sachin, I also ask you the same question about the plastic waste, circular economy, and the gender issues.
About plastic, here in Bhutan, women in rural area, they are. Urban area, they don't do much. In rural area, the plastics are not taken as a waste. They are taken as a money, because they weave basket out of plastic. Weaving basket, we have given them we have built their capacity with the NGOs. So they they collect, they buy plastics, and they make baskets out of that recycling. And in urban areas, in Thimphu, plastics are taken by private entities who make road. They are used in roads, building roads. That is green road. We call it green road. So plastic, as of now, it has become a lucrative business. And another entity, private entity, Greener Way, they make plastic poles, fencing poles, which we use in electric fencing to protect our crops from wild animals. We use plastic like that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So Teresa, could you just also share with us your perspective from Jamaica?
Sure. Okay. So as I mentioned in my presentation, Jamaica has our waste stream is about 16%, almost 17% is plastic. We have several bans, legislation regarding single-use plastic, bags, straws, and so forth. But we also have a voluntary deposit refund scheme for plastic bottles. Now, while plastic doesn't make up is not the most significant portion of the waste stream, it is what we find remaining in the environment for very long periods of time, ending up on our coastlines or beaches, which is a major tourism product, or coral reefs and so forth. So it's a big problem for us here. And despite these laws, it doesn't, and despite this voluntary deposit refund scheme for plastic bottles, and that's only two types of plastic bottles, type 1 and type 2, we still have issues relating to just having a lot of plastic in our environment. Now, again, similarly, we don't have the data in relation to linking it with gender, but what we see is that when we have educational like workshops, when we have workshops with communities, and those that are more interested in recycling to earn, because you can earn money from carrying and carrying a certain kilograms of plastic bottles, tend to be women. We have a lot of community-based organizations that are heavily involved in cleanups. And again, those cleanups, when you return the bottles, you can earn from it. Most of those organizations are, again, led by women. Schools are often very much involved in recycling of plastics. And the way how it's set up is that you can get a card, and you can earn money, or money will be deposited to the card so that you can use it for your school. Again, a lot of those school initiatives, the teachers that are involved in, say, environmental clubs, and the principals that are leading these programs are often women. So I think that there seems to be a greater interest in recycling of plastics by women. But again, we don't have the formal data to support this. And yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa, about the situation in the Jamaica. And thank you very much for participating in this interesting discussion about gender-related issues in the national waste management strategies. All 4 countries that presented today already have national waste management strategies. They are moving toward the implementation of that. And I think there are, of course, different levels of the involvement of women and the women's group in the national waste management strategies. At the same time, it is very crucial that the women are participating in the development of the national waste management strategies from the beginning. It is also important that the women are also participating in the decision on the waste management through the implementation of the national the waste management strategies. And some of the speakers really highlighting the lack of gender aggregated data, which will really make the decision-making difficult in terms of the waste and the gender nexus. And I think some of you also mentioned about the role of a woman in the informal sector, which is considered to be very, very important. At the same time, different countries have different experiences in the gender-related issues in the informal sector, particularly in the integration or the formalization of the informal waste pickers. And I think many of some of the participants, the questions also related to the plastic related issues, because it's a kind of really economically the feasible the waste. At the same time, some of the lack of data and really showing that the engagement of women in the plastic recycling and the plastic waste management are still yet to be really the research further, so that their engagement properly in the plastic waste management or recycling will be really promoted. So I cannot really summarize all the rich presentation and all the rich discussion today. I'm very sorry that I cannot really to pick up all the questions raised by the participants through today's Q&A box, as well as pre-registered questions. I really cannot really pick up all the questions for today. At the same time, some of the participants and the speakers already responded to the questions so far. And with this, I just would like to really say thank you to all the speakers today. And also thank you very much for the participants to really actively engage in the discussion for today's webinar. And we just would like to really document further the speakers' experiences today, so that we can really show all these as a good practices of the mainstreaming the gender in the national waste management strategies. And as speakers, we just would like to really ask you to really prepare a kind of really short note of your experiences of gender mainstreaming in the national waste management strategy, so that we can share more formally in our good practices management platform to really share your experiences wider beyond today's the webinar and beyond the current participants. So I'd really appreciate that the speakers are also really providing us your good practices type write-up for us. And with this, I just would like to really close today's webinar. I'm very sorry that 15 minutes over time. At the same time, it was really, really good that the speakers really sharing their experiences. And we just would like to really move further to really share more experiences, the sharing really more information about the gender related issues in the national waste management strategy development, as well as implementation. So with this, I'm really looking forward to the next round of discussion about the waste and the gender. So this is not the end of the discussion. So the UNEP ITC will organize further discussion on this very, very important topic. And we're really looking forward to interacting with all of you, including all the participants today. So thank you again. And See you all in the next round of discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Bye-bye.
much.